This morning I woke up and the first thing I did was to check out the dashboard and see how many students, like how many people were completing the projects. And it was really nice to see all the activity going on. I saw a lot of people during the night, during my night, and it was great to wake up like this. So today for this session, I'm not sure if it's gonna be 1 hour, maybe it will be more like 30 minutes, but we are going to talk about a very important topic, which is my favorite topic. It's DAOs. So this bootcamp focuses on three topics: Motoko, ICP, and DAOs. And today we are going to focus on DAOs. If I had to choose, I think this is my favorite subject among the three. And we're also going to talk about ICP because ICP has an important role in how DAOs evolve and can be shaped. But it will be mostly about DAOs. Before we jump into the session, I'm just gonna give a few answers. So no, the teams haven't been assigned, and also the recordings haven't been uploaded. I had many things to do. I received a lot of emails of people that couldn't join. I have my DMs that are full, so I'm a bit late on the teams and the recording. I'm super late. I'm hoping to do it today. At least for the recording, it's my priority. And yeah, I'll let you know once it's up there. For the teams, probably will be up tomorrow morning. Okay, let's go. I think everyone is here. Why do I want to talk about DAOs and why did I decide to focus the bootcamp on DAOs? Because I believe it's the opportunity of the next decade. So I usually make a prediction, which is if you are here in the next 10 years, you will work for a DAO. This is my prediction, either create your DAO or work for a DAO. And this could be in any area. Probably you have some area that you like more and you have some passions about specific topics. It could be science, it could be education. I am into education. Probably you've noticed it. I like science. I like investment. You could have a DAO for investments. Agriculture is another one. I got asked yesterday why did we add agriculture in the list of choices for the subject of research. This is because even a subject like agriculture or an industry like agriculture, I believe will be disrupted. I don't like the word disrupted, but will be transformed by DAOs and what I'm going to talk about today, and even energy as well. So why is it happening now? Why not 10 years ago, and why not 5 years in the future? This is because right now we have the combination of three factors that are very hard to get, but once they are together, they are unstoppable. When you have capital, talents, technology, you can change the world. You can do anything you want. You can build powerful companies. You can build powerful communities, and you can make an impact. And right now, we have the combination of the three. So I'll start from the right. I'll start with the tech. I believe the tech is probably the most important of the three because it brings the other. The tech I'm talking about is the internet computer, but also you will see that I'll mention artificial intelligence, which is going to play a huge role in how DAOs will be shaped, and all other Web3 technologies. I'm not forgetting about other blockchains. I'm not only focusing on ICP, but they are a combination of technologies that are fundamentally very powerful, that have been designed already like 5 or 10 years ago. People thought about it, but the level of maturity of those technologies is very, very close and very real in 2024, and it will keep on growing in 2025. And I believe now is really the time where it can change the life of people. Crypto has been around for a long time. It has changed the life of some people, but most people out there still have this impression that is true, actually, that it hasn't impacted their life so much. And it's because of the technological limitation. But now those technological limitations, they are almost gone. The second one is the talents. So this one is still, we are still in the early days because still Web3 is a very niche area. I think there are around 10,000 developers full-time in Web3, a little bit more probably now. But I was shocked when I saw this number because it's really, really low, really low if you compare to other industries, like there are millions of developers. But if you look around, if you look at what talented people are doing and what the brightest minds are doing, they are all moving to crypto, Web3 in general. That's, of course, that's there are other topics of research, and not everyone is moving to Web3, but everyone, if you look at the industry, you will notice a lot of skilled people, you will notice a lot of smart people, and I think that's not a coincidence. And finally, the capital. Well, you cannot do anything if you don't have the capital, but the capital is there and is waiting to be used actually. So there is the crypto capital. Of course, the crypto market has grown like crazy over the past 10 years. Now it's a $1 trillion industry, which is still not a lot in the huge in the huge scheme of things. It's not a lot, 1 trillion. But the growth that is expected in the next few years is kind of crazy. Now that we have the ETF, we have the traditional kind of world that is also starting to realize what's happening in crypto. I believe the capital is about to flow. And actually, it might be surprising, but there are a lot of capital that is waiting to be unleashed or to be released in those kinds of projects that I'm talking about, because many investors have also this feeling that traditional companies and a lot of systems are at the end of a cycle, or they are reaching some limits in terms of growth. Most sectors are already kind of monopolized, and it's really hard to grow more. But crypto and Web3 and DAOs is completely novel, and it's like this new landscape where there are a lot of opportunities. So I don't want to make any prediction because I'm really bad at that. It's not my job, and I'm really, really bad usually to make prediction in any financial prediction. But I'm optimistic that in the next few years, there will be a moment where there will be a lot of capital flowing into DAOs and all sorts of community projects, just because it makes sense financially, and also because there is this capital that is waiting to be deployed. Okay, but what is a DAO exactly? We keep talking about it, and DAOs everywhere. What is a DAO? Let's try to define it. And for that, I will ask you the question. What do you think is a DAO? You can answer me in the chat if you want, or you can also raise your hand and take your mic if you want to. But yeah, I'm curious, like, beyond the definition, I think most of you are familiar with the definition, decentralized autonomous organization. If you're not familiar, we will talk about it in a few minutes. But what does DAO evoke to you? Like, what kind of word does it bring to you? For me, it brings it's just my perspective, and I might be wrong, but it brings a few words like transparency is one, community, and tech, I would say. Like a mix of those three words. Those are the ideas that I have in mind, but those are just my ideas. New best practices for governance, yeah. Decentralized government for a project, a company that doesn't exist in any particular jurisdiction. DAO is a way to let people have voting power in the direction the project is going. Okay, yeah, voting power, governance, I guess those are like related topics. So company, it's interesting. I think it's interesting that you bring the word company. So the real definition of a DAO is decentralized autonomous organization, and decentralized meaning there is not one single person that can control the direction of the DAO. So there is a community, there is a vote system. Autonomous, which is, I think, the one that we always forget about in the original definition. When DAOs were first mentioned, the idea was to have a system that can actually run on its own using artificial intelligence. So, for example, having, let's say, a mining company or a mining DAO where every part of the system would be managed by robots and by smart contracts. So there is this huge aspect of autonomous, which I think is not real, at least today in 2024. I don't have, maybe very, very slight parts are automated, but there is no DAO that really works without intervention, human intervention, at least right now, as I'm speaking in 2024. And organization, of course, well, those are organizations. I think that makes sense. I like this definition, but I also have some problems with this definition, which is it's really limited in the sense that when I think about DAOs and what I want to talk about today, it's more than just this this definition of DAOs. What I want to talk about is this. So I want to talk about, and I want to study, and I want to know, and I want to try things, that are related to what I call trustless and co-owned software. There is this new technology that we have, so we can create software on ICP and on other blockchain, and we can make this software transparent, make this software trustless, and we can give this software, like the ownership of the software, to many people. I think it's a fundamental technological shift, and what I'm interested in is how do we use that? And I think it's more than maybe just the original definition of DAOs. I want to see, I don't believe there is necessarily one, like, how to say it, one way to build on the internet with this new approach. So, for example, one question that always comes to my mind is, to make things a little bit clearer, there is a trade-off between decentralization and efficiency. Sometimes it's really hard. Probably you've seen it yesterday when we did the teams and you had to find a topic. It's really hard to come up to a consensus when there are multiple people. If there is someone that stood up and say, hey, let's take that, it makes things easier when there is a leadership and when there is a clear direction. And that's, I mean, management has been like a topic of corporation over the past decades. So my thinking is like, does every organization on the internet needs to be a DAO? Is there other type of organizations that could use trustless software? For example, what if we could create an organization that is, yes, centralized, or at least there are some, elected representative or people that take decision. So the organization is efficient, but also there is some mechanism to prevent those people from abusing their power. What if we could easily revocate their access? What if we could see transparently the decision that they make and the things they decide? I'm not. I usually see a lot of confusion because sometimes people think it means everyone has to vote on everything. It means that there is decentralized governance, and yes, of course, it's one important part. But what I'm interested in, and when I say this DAO revolution, I think it's bigger than that. It's also businesses, how they work, how they operate, governments, how they operate, even local communities, all sorts of organizations, I think, could benefit from this technology. And they don't necessarily have to change the way they organize things. They don't necessarily have to give everyone a right to vote. Like a business, for example, if you give every customer or every people in the community some voting rights, maybe the businesses would go bankrupt in a few months, because this is maybe not how we should run businesses. So basically what I'm interested in is this new set of tools that we have, this toolbox, and how we can use it. And you will notice that I don't have any answer to give you. Like, I'm only giving out questions and some areas of research, but I'm not giving any answer because I believe there is a lot to experiment, but there is not like a perfect solution. So why does trustless software is so important? Well, because it cannot be corrupted. If you have a software that is properly coded, can be if it's depends how it's coded, but let's say it's properly coded, it cannot be corrupted. Also, it's really easy to audit. It's transparent, so it's really easy to audit. Not everyone is able to read the code, but you can have trusted parties that read the code and see that there is not a backdoor. No one is stealing your information. No one is stealing your data. Or if they are doing it, they are at least compensating you for something. It's global and accessible. That's a big point about DAOs. They make opportunities accessible to many people. Most of the tech opportunities and most of the opportunities in the years, let's say 2010, so in the previous decade, there were already like opportunities to, change the world and to do great things with technology, but it was limited to a specific place in the world, mostly the Silicon Valley. Of course, there were other people, other parts of the world, but it was very hard for people that were not in those areas to really access capital, access talents, and really make an impact. Now, I think it's completely it's the opposite that is happening. You can be anywhere in the world. We see people from maybe a coffee shop in Asia. They can launch a project, they can raise money, they can build a team around them. So it's completely changing this accessibility factor. Innovation, when everything is open, it's bringing more innovation because you have more parts of the system that you can look at and you can build on top of it. So that's what we've seen with Ethereum and Bitcoin, for example. Since the whole system is open and exposed, we've seen many people starting to build on top of the system. And if you're familiar with open source software and open source communities, this is how things usually work. You have innovation coming out, sometimes surprisingly, from the fact that pieces can be open and interoperate together. No middleman is a big one, so that reduces the fees and the complexification of many topics. We don't realize when we do like administrative tasks or when we just go about our daily life, how many people sometimes are involved in the middle and how much inefficiency and delays and fees it adds up to our daily life. So this one will probably simplify your life. And finally, the big one, this new software, we can own it collaboratively. So you can have a token that is directly linked to the software and makes you part of the system. So that's a big one. Instead of having those networks that are using us, we are now part of those networks. So it's essentially a new incentive for us. It's really hard to talk about DAOs. You'll notice it's a big topic. So it's also like, I call this a meta topic because it's going to be everywhere. And so it's more abstract than, it's more like theory than really practical when I talk about it. So it's kind of hard to talk about it. So that's why I wanted to talk about some examples of a few DAOs that I find interesting. The first two are from the Ethereum world and community. And the last one is the NNS DAO, which is a DAO on ICP. And all of them have different characteristics. So let's see what they do, how they make money, what kind of communities they have, and what kind of limitations they have. The first one that I want to talk about is the one from Uniswap. So Uniswap is a project on Ethereum that is a decentralized finance project. Maybe most of you are familiar with it. If you are not familiar with it, I can show you quickly. Let me see, on the left. Yeah, it's here. So Uniswap.org. Uniswap is a decentralized crypto trading protocol. So those platforms where you can exchange your crypto. So if you have a token A, you can swap for token B. And so this is built originally on Ethereum. Now it's expanding to other ecosystems. And it's a simple DeFi application, probably one of the most successful now. And it's also an interesting project because they have launched a token way after they had already some success. So they launched in 2018 originally. They launched their application. So there is a team of developers, they build that. And 2 years later, they already had some consequent success. They decided to launch a token and to start the Uniswap DAO. So the Uniswap project was already there before the DAO started to exist and take some importance. And it's regarded as one of the best distribution of tokens for a simple reason. They went back like in the history of their application and they check all the people that participated in the project in the early days, so use the platform, and they decided to reward them, airdrop them. I think the airdrop was worth a few $1,000 at the peak. And that's a super interesting marketing strategy and also like community building strategy, because they essentially made everyone win with them. So this is what DAOs represent for me. It's this idea that you can be, early in a community, in a project, and if things go well, you get part of this and you have also some part of rewards because you've contributed to this project. Now, the DAO, exactly what does the DAO do? Well, I've looked at it. I've been to their website. So there is a DAO section, and this is here. They have proposals, and if you have the token, you can essentially vote on those proposals. But it's a bit boring, I would say, and it's not super interesting because they actually vote and there is not a direct execution. So what I mean is that, for example, they will decide to deploy on a new blockchain, they will decide to expand the ecosystem, work on a new feature, or add a new provider, or maybe change some parameters in the infrastructure they have, so the fees and all sorts of things. But it's not immediately executing the proposal. So there is still a team of developers that has to be trusted to implement those changes. So to sum it up, Uniswap DAO for me is a really good example of how to reward your community, how to build something valuable and then build a DAO. The other way around could have worked as well, but I think it's interesting in that regard that you start by providing value and then building a DAO on top of it. But on the DAO side, it's very, I would say, limited technically because it's a technical limitation. They cannot really go beyond just voting on some topics, and they don't really implement any kind of execution of those proposals. Now, the second one is Gitcoin. Gitcoin is one of my favorite projects on Ethereum. So Gitcoin runs program for developers and they fund open source software. They also have this idea of Gitcoin passports, which we can talk about maybe later. And they essentially run those grant program where you can, they raise money and then they allocate money to developers, and they do it with what's called as quadratic funding. So quadratic funding, essentially, instead of having funding going to one big project, it's divided into a lot of different projects. So essentially, the more money you want, the harder it gets for you. You have to get more votes in a quadratic way, so with a square root. And so essentially, it makes it more distributed. You fund more projects with the fund that you've raised. So it's essentially a developer, I would say mostly developer-focused community. And same thing as with Uniswap, they've launched, and only 4 years later, so 4 years is a long time, they've started to implement a DAO system. It's considered one of the most decentralized DAO. And from what I've looked at, it's pretty interesting the way it happens, because there are actually a lot of contributors that are not originally from the team. And I would say, I mean, I didn't have enough time, but from what I've seen, it seems to be decentralized in a real way when you look into the community and how people vote and take decisions. And you can see a chart here that shows, and I think it's already like 1 year old, the chart that I have here, but it shows how the voting power is divided into the community and the most active contributors. Yeah, that's about it for the Gitcoin DAO. But again, the Gitcoin DAO has this limitation, this technical limitation of how do we implement the proposals that we vote on. Mostly it's trust-based. So if something is decided, then it has to be executed. But there is not an automatic execution if we vote on something. It doesn't necessarily happen. Now, on the completely other side, we have the ICP world, and we have the NNS Network Nervous System, which launched in May 2021, which is actually the year the the network was started. And it's actually the DAO that governs the ICP network. So it's fundamental to what ICP is. And curious fact, it's actually the biggest DAO in the world right now. If you look at any metric, so if you look at the number of members, if you look at the total value locked, the number of proposals, it's the biggest DAO in the world. And I would say it's also the most technologically advanced DAO, because the big difference is that in the NNS case, when when a proposal is passed, so we can see the proposals that we have here, it's automatically executed. So for example, let's say one of the proposal is to change the, that would be a very controversial proposal, but let's say there is a proposal that is passed and it's about creating more ICP tokens. So increasing the inflation for the ICP token. I don't think it would pass because it would be very controversial, but let's say it passes. Then the NNS, which is a canister, or at least it's a set of canisters, will send a call to the ICP token canister and automatically execute the proposal. And all those things happen for other types of proposals. The NNS is responsible for managing the network. So whenever there is a new node that wants to join the network, the NNS has to approve it and it's automatically executed. Responsible for starting SNSs. So SNSs, I will talk about that in a few moments. It's responsible for the ICP token, supply and inflation, and also all sorts of managements for the network. So it passes a lot of different proposals, and we can actually take a look. It would be interesting to see that. So we are on the dashboard for the internet computer, and there is this, where is it? It's here, governance tab, which shows us quite some information about the network on ICP. So for example, we can see the number of neurons. A neurons is created whenever you stack ICP for a certain duration. And if you stack for more than 6 months, it gives you voting power. One of the main problems that we have is that we don't know how many neurons corresponds to the same person. There is no, I would say, proof of humanity or proof of personhood system implemented. So when we look at the number of neurons, we don't know, maybe one person owns a lot of neurons. That's one of the critics of the NNS that we could have. This is the total voting power. There are some rewards for the person voting. And what I wanted to talk about is the proposals. So we can see proposals right now. For example, this is one proposal that is interesting. So there is this concept of a name neuron. A name neuron is someone that decides to link their identity to their neuron. So it's not something mandatory. You cannot do it if you want. But if you want to be, I would say, like a voice in the community, you want to share your opinion and people to follow you, you can do this proposal and you can be accepted as a name neuron. You will be added to the list of name neurons. And then people are able to follow you. So usually you can, in the proposal, talk about your project, who you are, your backgrounds, what is your vision, and why. Also, you can also sum up your thinking or your political point of view, I would say. And you can be accepted as a name neuron, and then it's up to you to make people follow you if they want to follow you. So what does it mean to follow if you are not familiar? When there are proposals, you don't want to miss out on proposals because you want to vote on every single one of them, because the more voting, the more rewards for you. But voting on every proposal is very time consuming. And also, maybe you don't want to vote on every proposal. Maybe you only want to vote on some categories because you are only interested. And then for other categories, you can decide to follow some name neurons. So I do follow people that I trust, that I have trust in. I trust that they vote every time, and I trust that most of the time, sorry, most of the time I am in agreement with what they believe, and so I would vote the same. Even if you follow someone, you can still vote anytime. Like if there is a proposal coming up and you believe it's really important, you want to vote, even if you follow someone, your vote will be always more important. So that's it for a quick demo of the NNS. I don't know if this proposal is going to be accepted. I believe it's going to be accepted. Yes, there is already like 4% and almost no almost no one is voting against. I don't see any reason to vote against it. I mean, yeah. And there are, as you can see, there is some configuration for the nodes. This is upgrading some canisters. So this is, for example, a good example. This is mostly developer focused, so only developers would really look at that. But there is a commit on GitHub, so a new feature is released. Like new feature is released, you have access to the repository, to the code, so you can see that the code corresponds to the proposal, and you can do that with the hash that you have here. So you can see that this is actually legit, and then you can vote, and most of the time those proposals will be accepted. But if there were something wrong, hopefully those proposals would be rejected. And there are actually some communities and people that check all of those proposals manually. So it's a lot of time, but it's something that some people do. You can take a look at the previous proposals. And I think what's interesting is the transparency of it. So you can see who voted what. And yeah, you can see like informations, like all those name neurons that I've talked about. You can see what they voted, how they voted on each proposal, and so on. And I really like that there are more and more name neurons. I think it's interesting, and it's good that projects on ICP do these name neuron things. The more decentralized the NNS, the better for the ICP network. It has been a critique of ICP that I think is the most legit, like from all the critics that I've heard, from it's a scam, the technology doesn't work. What else? It's not real tech, and so on. I never take this critique seriously because those are just people that don't know what they talk about. I think the NNS is maybe the part of the IC that can be critiqued, and I would say it needs to be decentralized enough for the IC to be trustworthy and to be a place where developers really want to build. So I have a lot of ideas. I think the NNS is going to be decentralized in the sense that we have many, many things and features that we can implement to make it decentralized. But ultimately, only time will tell, and only community members stepping up and participating is the way, for me, the way to go. Okay. Let's go back. And in case you're not familiar, yeah, for example, one thing that would make the NNS more decentralized, or at least more transparent from just adding a feature, by just adding a feature, would be to know how much voting power corresponds to which group or which person. So if we have a way to link identities and neurons, even if it's anonymous, we would know if someone has enough voting power to take pass proposal on their own, or at least to collide. Because right now we don't know, because we only see neurons, and neurons, as I said, they can belong to the same person. So you can say like, oh, but you need maybe 1,000 neurons, but actually maybe one person has 1,000 neurons. You don't know, and I don't know. No one knows. The good thing is that I believe those features will come up at some point, and I know that for a fact that it's something that every project on ICP should be contributing to, because ultimately it's gonna make it better for them. So there is incentives to make that more decentralized, which makes me optimistic on that. Okay, so what is the link between DAOs and ICP? So of course there is the NNS, which is a DAO, but what is the link between building DAOs and the internet computer? Well, most of the DAOs that we have today, they use centralized tools. So for example, you can see a list of tools here. I'm also guilty of using some of them in my daily workflow, but most DAOs, they actually use those tools. So for example, they use Amazon Web Services to host their front end. They use, or to pay for any kind of backend services, cron task, and so on. They might have a Twitter account that is controlled by a team of developers. They probably use GitHub to host their code. They have a lot of resource on Notion and so on. The problem, I'm not saying that Notion is bad. I'm not saying that Amazon Web Services is necessarily bad. Those are good services, but we've said that DAOs needs to be transparent. Those are transparent organizations. And some of those tools, they introduce third parties. So they introduce a risk of censorship, or at least parts of controlling some of the stack of the DAO. And so my point is that centralized tools are not a good fit for decentralized organizations. Most organizations have understood that, but it's hard to move away from them because we don't have the technology, or we didn't have the technology to build serious alternatives. Now, I believe we have the technology with the internet computer to build alternatives. So for example, we've seen more and more DAOs on ICP using OpenChat. And that's great because OpenChat is a decentralized application, and it makes sense for the DAO to want to use OpenChat. I'm also guilty of that. We are using Discord for the bootcamp. I have Twitter. There are many pieces that are not on decentralized application, but the trend is clear, and it's moving in it's moving in the sense of the decentralization of applications, because the DAO can only be decentralized if all the tools that the DAO is using are also decentralized or transparent. And it's maybe also the other way around. Like maybe some of those applications that you see here, they will integrate decentralized features and transparency feature. They will move towards that. For example, Notion could be one of the case where they actually decide to go into Web3 and they implement some features to make it more decentralized, more transparent, and so on. So maybe we don't need to replace everything, but it needs to be at least moving in this direction, where there is an ownership of the application. We can be sure about the code, it's transparent, and there is no censorship. So more concretely, what can we use DAOs for, and what can you use DAOs for? We've seen that we can use a DAO to manage a DeFi application slash infrastructure. So this was Uniswap. We can manage a DAO to make investment decisions. This would be, for example, let's say, I don't have a good example, but there are many DAOs that I don't have an example on top of my mind right now, but there are DAOs that essentially group money and they decide to invest together. Not saying this is necessarily better than investing on your own, but this is something that you could do. Managing a grant program, this is what Gitcoin is doing. Managing a social network, that would be the DAO of OpenChat, for example. creating and selling memes. So this is actually, there is a DAO called Meme DAO, which creates and sell memes. So basically DAOs can be used for everything and almost anything. And I think there is a saying that goes like this. If there is not a DAO for that, there will be a DAO for it, or something like this. So DAOs can really be used for anything. How can you start your DAO? I think we shouldn't overcomplicate it. For me, this is just simple as that. And that's why I also lay out this step-by-step guide in the DAO adventure. Find a mission, so something you're passionate about. Share it with the rest of the world, build your community around that, and that's it. And then things will naturally happen. I think we have seen more and more content creator and online communities over the past few years growing on the internet, mostly to share knowledge. But now it's starting to, there are more and more projects, so people are starting to take actions, but they didn't have the structure to do it, or they didn't have the proper structure to do things like in a community manner and also collaborative manner. But DAOs are coming. It's getting more and more, it's getting easier and easier to build a DAO and also to use a DAO, to invest, to participate. And so essentially those communities that have a project, if they want to do something online, they will be able to do it more easily with a DAO. So if you want to start a DAO, it's just as easy as building your community and building a clear vision of what you want to do. Of course, then after that, you have to go more into the details of the technology that you want to use and all sorts of rules and all sorts of legal things. But this is, I would say, the basic. Now let's talk about the SNS, which is the one way to create a DAO. And this is actually one of the most used way on the IC. I want to be clear that this is one way to do things, but it's not the only way. I think it's a confusion usually. Like, this is a framework that was built by Definity. So the vision. Oh, sorry, my mic got hijacked, I think. Yeah, okay, it should be good. I had an issue with my mic. Okay. So this is a framework that was built by Definity. Service nervous systems that enable developers to give away control of their application. So essentially, you have a set of canisters that represents your application. And then you are the controller of those canisters. So you are able to, upgrade the software and do whatever you want. And one day you go through the SNS and you give away all those canisters to another canister. And then this canister creates a token. And this token is given away to the community through decentralization sale. And then community members, they own a part of your tech stack, of your canisters, and they are able to vote or follow you for future upgrades and development of the platform. So it's just one framework that was built by Definity. It's great because it's very, very powerful and it's super easy to use for developers. It gives access to a lot of other infrastructures, but it's not, it's not like you have to do it like this. Actually, there are other DAOs on ICP that are not using the SNS and they are doing great. It's just, one way to do things. But it's interesting because with this standardized way of doing things, we have access to kind of gather the information because we can easily gather all those canisters. They have the same interface for the SNSs, so we can easily gather information on the token supply, the votes, the proposals, the number of members, and so on. The first SNS that I want to talk about is OpenChat. So this is the one, my favorite to talk about because it's also the easiest one. Messaging application, they went through the SNS, they've raised $5 million worth if you convert it back to ICP. And now they have a treasury, so it's here, ICP treasury. And every time they want to operate or hire someone or do something for the application, for the development, they have to pass a proposal. So you might say it's not really how I want to build my startup, because like if you raise money, you would like to be able to use that money. But they've raised money for the DAO and not for the startup. So it's a different approach. And it enables them to actually involve other developers and other investors, community members into the DAO, and to be rewarded for that. For example, I know they had a community program that worked really great. And if you take a look at their proposals, I think there is one which was saying, yeah, you can see like there are proposals for almost anything. I'm not sure it's the best interface, like for that we found out, and we will never move away from that, because I believe this might be more interesting to have more, I don't know, more aggregated ways to see, to take a look at those proposals, and to be easily able to, you know, get information from that. But we can see that, for example, whenever they want to add a token, they have to pass a proposal. So I think this is a proposal that was submitted by an external member. So this person, let's say, this is Jack Shiba. I guess this person is doing some work on a meme token, I guess, iShiba. And he wanted this token to be added to OpenChat registry. So he just passed a proposal, and he got, well, the voted was, I guess he was refused here. Yeah, rejected. So I guess he was not convincing enough. And yeah, those are other failed proposals. So rejected. Ah, this one was passed. Anyway, yeah, this one was passed apparently. So it's like, you know, you have to be as transparent as possible. I guess being maybe a known figure in the community also helps to pass proposals and to be able to propose, you know, things to the DAO. And that's about it. I just want to summarize by this slide, which I really like. If the system doesn't want to change, let's rebuild one. Finance has already, or is actually already being transformed by DAOs. Decentralized finance is already big, but there are a lot of other topics that I think haven't been touched on by the crypto community and even Web3 tech communities and technologies, and big topics, big industries that needs to be, I really don't like the word disrupted, but I'm gonna say it, that needs to be disrupted, or at least change in a fundamental way how they work. So let's stay optimistic, and we have this technology, so can make use of it. Do you have any question? It's very, it's 50 actually. I thought it was earlier than that. So we only have 8 minutes remaining. But if you have any question about DAOs, something that was not clear, it's a huge topic. Yeah, it's a really huge topic, and I could talk about it for hours, but it's an interesting one. Can you create a SNS using the framework programmatically? Yes. So the SNS is actually like a toolbox with kind of ready to use code and templates that you can just set some parameters and just launch your DAO like this. So it's, as I was saying, it's a framework, and you can start an SNS not in a few seconds, because you have to understand how it works. You have to set the parameters. It's still quite some work, but once you've understood how it works, you can just create more and more SNSs as you go. Need to make a Motoko Bootcamp DAO. Yes, I want to make a Motoko Bootcamp DAO. Actually, I want to make it possible for you to be involved in what I'm doing. So I have been thinking a lot about it, and I'm curious if a DAO could run a bootcamp, like if a DAO could actually organize and run a bootcamp in a coordinating manner. Like, but it's a long process. I want to go. I want to go. I want to do it, and I want to share it. Like I want to kind of document my journey as I go about it, and I think it will happen naturally at some point. But when I see like the work that you have to put, and you need like a correct structure, you need some financial incentives for people to get involved. So yeah, it's a lot of question, but I think it's going to happen, like for sure. Who can create a proposal on NNS? Anyone. So you just need to have one ICP token because creating a proposal costs one ICP. This is, I think it's one ICP now, to prevent the spam. So before it was actually free, so you could spam new proposals. Could be handled by Motoko DAO. So I don't want to, I don't want to confuse the Motoko DAO and the Motoko Bootcamp. I was part of there was a Twitter space like 2 days ago on the Motoko DAO. And so they are launching a token and they are launching a DAO. But I don't want to be confused for the Motoko DAO because Motoko DAO is separated project from Motoko Bootcamp. But for sure, we probably are going to have some collaboration with them because it would make sense. We need to bridge the gap between real life and digital DAO. It's close to an impossible task. Yeah, that's a very good point and a very good question. And like, how can we bridge the gap? I think there is something to do with local communities and DAOs. For example, I think DAOs are really good for global impact and sharing knowledge, but they are very very inefficient to really take action, concrete action to like change the physical world. Like for example, let's say you have a DAO that specialize in educating people, or no, education is different because knowledge can be shared, but a DAO that wants to regenerate forests. How do you move from like passing a proposal online to actually having people that go and do things in the real world? And I think local communities can be the answer. I think a lot of local communities could be aggregated in some DAO where they share like patterns and they share knowledge and best practices and maybe financial resources. And then like local communities would be useful for creating like bonds with people, connection with the local local people and the local how do we say it, like the people that take the decision locally and also the people that can act on the ground. So not sure exactly where to take this, like from which angle, if it's from the digital side or the physical, but there is something to do for sure. Okay, well, I was very happy to share that with you. If you have any question about DAOs, feel free to reach out to me. As I said, I'm always excited to talk about that, and let's see what the future holds for us. I see every one of you in 5 minutes. We have, 5 minutes, yeah, around 5 minutes. We have a session on data structure, so we will go back to Motoko and we will go back to coding. Hope you enjoy this one, and see you in a few minutes. Bye.